This is Kentucky's Voice Radio, covering the latest state and local issues with Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott, and Jim Waters.
All right, welcome to the program, Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host today, Tom Fallbush, along with my co-host, Debbie Robbins. And we have a really cool show because we're about, 2 days out from the July 4th. From
Happy
our Independence
birthday,
Day celebration.
America!
So America is, we're 250 years old. That's, it's pretty, that's pretty, it's old, but considering, other countries and empires around the world, that's probably young. But, but there's a lot of people that have a theory, though, that the average empire lasts 250 years. There's actually this whole, school of thought and academia of people studying, civilizations and how long they last. And there's a great book written on the topic. I'll pull it up in a minute. But this author basically says every empire lasts for 250 years because it's basically like 10 generations. And he says that there's a cycle that they go through where they kind of break out and they're really entrepreneurial and they're really exciting and they believe in themselves and they grow and then they get real successful and then they get a bit decadent and lazy and they just kind of take it for granted and then they just kind of lose it and so. And somebody else comes along and knocks them off, So
yeah. Well, I have a question for you because this is the one question I don't think I've ever heard anybody answer: is how many of those nations that have failed were labeled as one nation under God?
Good question. Good question. Okay. Well, I think you could probably say there's a few like the British Empire, for example. They were great. They had a good run up until probably World War II, and then they lost their empire. But they're not totally disappeared. They haven't been conquered yet. They're on the way to being conquered by Islam if they're not careful. But they're still around. But so you could say maybe that would be somewhat of a Christian empire. But they kind of got away from their faith in a lot of ways.
They did, so and we have. But hopefully, we're having a resurgence, or at least. I'm excited that we get to sit here every day and try to make that reminder. But yeah, I mean, that is fascinating. Like I told you before, my son went to the Latin school and they studied the history of life through the biblical timeline and, the rise of the Roman Empire and the fall. Right. And my son, he's only 21, but he'll always say to us, Mom and Dad, I don't know what you're all getting so upset over. Do you realize how awful the people were back during the Roman Empire days?
That's right.
And it makes me laugh. It's true, but yet we're one nation under God, and I don't want to give up. Do you, Tom? I know you don't.
I'm not going to give up, and and I think like Rome, America's a lot like Rome. There's a lot of parallels. What's interesting is the Roman Republic. It lasted about 250 years before Caesar came in. And then turned into the empire, right? So that's kind of interesting. So, and you know what? Why it fell? There was actually this problem in Rome where you had all this the elites who brought in slaves, right, to basically supplant the middle class.
Okay.
And so the middle class couldn't get ahead, and so you had this real political divide in Rome at the time of the middle class and who were fighting against the elites. You had a couple of brothers by the name of the Gracchi brothers that came up, and they were like the Trump characters of Rome. And they said, no, we got to, but they were part of the elite, but they were kind of defecting from the elite and say, no, we need to protect the middle class and all, these slaveholders, that's wrong and ruining the economy. Well, it's just like today, with the elites bringing in the immigrants, right?
Yes.
Taking our jobs. So the same sort of thing. But guess what happened to the Gracchi brothers? They got assassinated by the elites.
Don't even.
They were taken out.
Don't even go there.
Interesting parallel, right?
Right.
And so Trump's been trying to, they've tried to take him out twice.
Right.
So, I mean, it's interesting. It's just history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme, So
it sure does rhyme.
Yeah,
but again, we're one nation under God, and in the name of Jesus.
That's right.
We're not gonna give in.
It's either King Jesus or King Caesar.
Exactly.
Because that's where it could go. That's where this could go. Because that's historically when empires or republics break down, people crave a strong man to come in and just take over. And Trump is almost like that archetype in some ways, but he's still democratic. He's still, anyway. So fascinating stuff. I didn't want to get into that, but she brought it up. She brought up Rome. Men talk Rome all the time. So there's a whole meme about men talking Rome. Okay, we'll be right back here in Kentucky's Voice. July 4th, right around the corner.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. We're talking about America 250 and, just the history of history in general. It just speaks that, empires don't last forever. Civilizations don't last forever. There's cycles they go through. They're very, a tribe or a nation is very much like an organism. It has a life cycle. And so the question is, has America gone through its life cycle? Are we on this inherent decline, or are we on a rebirth moment, or are we sort of on a renewal moment? Because America's gone through these moments before, where we've kind of reset our politics, but we were talking about Rome in the last segment, and it's there is this interesting history of Rome, how when it expanded. I mean, when it first started, it was a very middle class thing. You had Roman citizens who actually fought in the army, right? Well, as Rome expanded, they started bringing in slaves, and so the elites that ran Rome, they suddenly had all this slave labor, and so that undermined the economy, and so the middle class couldn't get ahead, and so you had this real bifurcation of wealth. And so that caused the political system to get very unstable. You had this fight between there was a political party called the Popolare, and I forgot the other party, but the Popolare was kind of like the MAGA crowd. Right? They were the MAGA of Rome. Right. And you had a couple of guys named the Gracchi brothers who were like the Trumps, and they said, no, we represent the middle class. We're going to restore Rome. We're going to make it great again. And the elites, what they did, they killed the Gracchi brothers. They assassinated them. And so now what happened after that? That didn't solve the problem. There was still a lot of instability. There was a civil war. And so Caesar came in and goes, I'm putting all this down. I'm in charge now. Okay. Right. I'm in charge. And guess what happened? See, the Senate killed Caesar. Yes. Yeah. But then that didn't end Caesarism, because then it's boom, then became. So I'm saying all that, and historically, people and civilizations, where there's too much instability, people crave stability, and they'll give up their freedoms to an authoritarian just to get stability. And so that's why we need to restore this country and get people on the same track. We can't have these two tribes. Just like Lincoln said, you can't have a country that's slave or free. You got one side has to win, one side has to lose. And so because we can't have this house divided. Right now, we're a house divided, politically. I mean, politically, culturally, spiritually. And so we've got to get some resolution. I feel like we're on the ascent. The conservatives are kind of renewing ourselves. We're kind of on the ascendance, but the fight is nowhere near over.
We have to press.
Right.
People out there, what are you thinking? 502-571-0970, 502-571-0970. What are you all thinking out there? Are you thinking like us? We need to press. I'm ready for full court press. I'm a Kentuckian. We love our basketball here, and we're going to do full court press on American values, on Kentucky values, the local values. We've got to be engaged. We can't just sit out here and talk about it. We have to be engaged. And that means, get involved in the community. Get involved in your local political party. I'm not saying you have to be a Republican. A lot of people, I don't want to be a Republican. If you're a Christian and you're a conservative, right now the Republican Party is the only game in town that mostly represents your values.
That's right.
So please get engaged. Please get involved, because we make a difference. Every time I see these elections, Tom, where they have been won by 35 votes.
Yeah. Yeah,
especially local. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
Locally, come on.
That's right.
It's crazy. And, it's like President Trump says, make it too big to rig if you're worried about it being crooked. If we get out there in numbers and vote, you can crush.
Let me say this: independents as well. Democrats, there's a lot of disaffected Democrats that are starting to wake up and realize, hold on, my party's being taken over by socialist, democratic socialist. That a democratic socialist is not your traditional American Democrat. Okay, even your traditional liberal from the 1960s or 80s. Those are two different species, right? And so if you're still on that party and you're still, starting to get really uneasy about, Mondamis and socialists and people saying,
and we have a socialist on the Democrat side. It's the white people
that are the problem. The white people, because that's what they're saying now. It's basically we're going to come in. It's the third worlders. We're coming in. We're going to take over, and we're going to vote ourselves in our own leaders, and we're going to punish all you Americans who
And
built this
Tom,
country.
we
And
have
so
to beware here in Kentucky because we have a Democrat socialist who's running for Senate.
we do. We absolutely do.
So
That's
you
absolutely.
got to be aware you can't fall for the traps.
You can't. So let me pull all this back together with what just happened this week. Okay, so we talked about Rome and how you've got the immigration problem or the slave problem in
Right.
Rome, right? Which is like our immigration problem because really
We
illegal
use them as
immigration.
slaves.
Yeah, corporations are basically using illegal immigrants like slave labor, right?
Right.
So it's undermining the wages of the middle class. So what just happened this week? We had birthright citizenship ruled on at the Supreme Court. That basically says all you got to do is step into this magical soil of America and plop a baby out, and suddenly they're a citizen. And so basically, Debbie, citizenship is almost worthless now when it comes to the way that the country views citizenship. If all it means to be an American is you just show up and just put your foot on the soil and you're an American, then it doesn't mean anything. American, there's no, where's the loyalty? Where's the heritage? Where's the understanding of who we are, our values, our cultures? None of that's taken. And our founding fathers did not intend that. They founded this country for their, I think, what was the term? Something their posterior, basically their people and their posterior. So basically, for the folks that were living at that time and their descendants, that's what the country was created for. And of course, the country didn't. We do invite immigrants in when it's convenient to us, legal immigration, and then we can shut that off when it's not convenient for us. So that's real. But the country was founded for the people who founded it, and so it's not for the rest of the world. This isn't some charity for the world. This is America is not a welfare system,
and we're
for the
treating
world.
it like a charity,
That's
and we're all of us that are tax-paying citizens are paying for it, and it's absolutely wrong. And it was a very close decision, 5-4. I haven't read both sides of the argument, but I was very disappointed in Judge Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett for not seeing the forest for the trees. Who knows why they did that? I have no idea. But they've thrown it back into the laps of Congress. But again, getting an amendment. Thank you, Senator Rand Paul, who has crafted an amendment for birthright citizenship to stop it. But it's going to take 38 states to ratify it.
If it's
which
going to
we
go,
know we'll have
right.
at least 27 conservative states, but you're going to have to get 11 more to agree to that. Goodness gracious, that'll be very difficult. But we can do it, people. But if we can't do that, other laws that can happen are stopping people, as Mark Wayne Mullen, he's our Homeland Security guy. He's former senator. He said he's proposing a law or a bill that will stop women from getting on planes from other countries that are pregnant.
Right.
So they can't come over here and have babies and say, boom, I'm a citizen.
Tourism. Yeah, well, let's end birth tourism. There's really is a thing called birth tourism. So, like, there's this whole Chinese scandal, basically, or the scheme where you can just, if you're pregnant, you can just pay this company and they'll ship you to America and you can have your baby in San Diego or LA, and then you've got American citizenship. So now,
what they're doing too is they go home, they raise their kid, a wonderful communist, and then they send him over here for college.
That's right.
Or her.
That's right.
And then they infiltrate.
That's
their plan.
Right.
And that's what they've been doing.
And then they vote. They go back to their country, live in China, but they vote in our elections. They get welfare, they get Social Security, and all this silliness, and
they buy property,
right? And you wonder why we get things like Mondami, that's taking. So folks, listen, we're getting close to losing our country because we let this happen. We basically open the floodgates and let the third world in. Not that people in the third world are evil people, right? But just they're people that have different value systems. They don't understand the heritage of the United States. A lot of people in these other countries are very collectivist in their mindset. They're very have a lot of class issues, and they're
very tribal.
Very tribal, exactly right. So it's hard. That's why assimilation is so important. When immigrants come here, we need to make sure that they are working towards assimilating and becoming one of us, becoming like America. If not, then all that is colonization. We're just asking them to come in and colonize, and that's not good for anybody. It causes division. And listen, diversity is not our strength. You go to any country and look at diversity. Diversity doesn't play out. There's a whole, the whole term balkanization. Balkanization. What that comes from? It comes from the Balkans in Europe, where you have all these tribes that live close to one another that don't get along, and they fight constantly, and it's a separation of tribal, And so so we're basically balkanizing our country with all
Right.
these just ethnic groups that are coming in and not assimilating. And yes, here in Louisville as well, right? Drive around Louisville, you'll
Yes.
notice it. It's getting kind of strange. And so
It is.
And
And it's gotta stop.
you little, you're just somebody that's anti-immigrant and you're just racist. No, it's not that. It's like
No.
we want a society, a civilization, a community. We want to be able to feel like we have a connection with our neighbors, that people view the same way. I walk into a store and I see 15 burqas, and I'm like,
Right.
do I really feel like I belong here? Is these people feel connected to me in any way? I mean, do they look out? Do they care at all about me and my family? For example, do they share the history that my family shared? Going through world wars
No,
and
they
founding this
don't.
country. They don't, and so you just have that's just it's wrong, and it shouldn't happen that way. So I'm sorry. Go
No,
ahead.
no, that's
I wanna
okay.
react.
I understand your passion, and I appreciate it so much. And but again, I just want to anybody out there listening, all of you, we have got to remain involved. We have to rescue our country. We have to rescue them. That means you've got to vote. You've got to get engaged with the people that represent you locally, statewide. You need to absolutely demand in a good way, not a vicious way, but you've got to demand, because this is our country. It's we the people, that bills get passed that protect our rights, that protect our religious liberty, like getting rid of Sharia law, making sure it never takes root in
Never.
this state.
It is not compatible.
And so many other things, but just we have to win the midterm elections.
That's right.
Right.
That's exactly right. Well, and also, we only got 10 seconds left, so we want to hear your thoughts. 5710970. We're also going to talk about Mitch McConnell. A lot of rumors about his health right now. We're going to kind of unpack that and see where we're at with Mitch. And so we'll be right back here at Kentucky's Voice. But listen, happy July 4th. It's a great country. We're going to.
kyvoice.org.
All right, welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host today, Tom Fallbush, with Debbie Robbins. We're talking about July 4th and the country and 250 years and how, that's about the average lifespan of an empire throughout history, of a civilization. And someone sent, and we want to hear your text, 5710970, 5710970, of course, 502. And somebody made a point that England's still around, and they were around longer than 250 years. But the British Empire, which really started, say back in the 1750s or so, that's kind of gone. That doesn't exist much anymore. I think the early 20th century it fell apart, and so.
But the good news is they did defeat their prime minister. He did resign.
Yeah, it's true.
that one recently, but I think
But
their
they're
big
gonna
problem is
replace
their
him with
mayor
another.
of London,
Yeah, that
who's
too.
the Muslim.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, well, same issue. You know,
Yeah.
they basically let their capital city become predominantly non-English.
Right.
It's like 60-70% non-English now. It's just people that are
crazy.
foreign born, and so it's
Crazy.
so they're so England is, they got to figure some stuff out, and it's probably going to get messy. I think. Because politically, I don't think they have a system there that can really fix their problems, and that's America. Luckily, we've got a primary system. We've got states. We've got federalism. We've got some mechanisms to fix things. Over in Europe, when they have these parliamentary systems, it's very hard to get enough. For example, Reform had such a huge turnout in this last election, but they get like 3 seats in Parliament, right?
Right.
And so something about their system doesn't allow for sort of an insurgency idea to come in and really change things, you know. And so where America, we can actually win a primary and win the general, and suddenly you've got a Rand Paul that's kind of a more libertarian, or suddenly you've got a Bernie Sanders is practically a communist, you know.
Right.
So you can get these people that are on the fringes actually with some power and can start making some changes. We can get a Donald Trump. Imagine a Donald Trump ever being elected in England. You know, it's now they're about to. They're about to
crazy
with
if they did. But
Yeah.
I mean, but we also, but we have our issues.
Yeah.
The Save America Act needs to be passed, which we have 4 holdout Republican senators, including our very own Mitch McConnell, who at this moment is in a hospital bed
That's
somewhere
right.
in Bethesda,
He
Maryland.
sure is. Yeah, we had a text
And
earlier.
a lot of
yeah,
people
go
have been
ahead.
asking us. Did you say people are asking about
And
that?
people are asking about Mitch McConnell, so we're going to play a story here from Spectrum News that explains what's been going on. But I got a couple more. I have to read this because this is a good one. They were talking about Justice Barrett, who was one of the swing votes to vote against the birthright citizenship, and so, or for it, I guess, for it. And they said Justice Barrett claims her vote was personal due to her Haitian children that she adopted. Her problem is now our problem. She could have just simply put those children through U.S. citizenship instead of adopting them. So I think she's got a sympathy towards this issue that's probably a little bit.
It's skewed.
Skews her opinion here, and that's
It
so
does.
now we've
It's
got a problem.
skewed.
You know, we have
She's not thinking of our nation.
That's
I
right.
hate to say it. It's very selfish.
exactly right.
And I'm sorry, but it's very selfish, Justice Barrett.
That's right. So, but we're going to fix it. You know, at least in America, we've got a can-do spirit. We can fix
Yes.
this stuff. You know, we can renew ourselves, and we're going to do it.
Mayor, I
And-
can.
That's right.
Yeah.
Here we go. Mitch McConnell. Let's talk about renewing. Maybe we need some renewal here. So.
Senator Mitch McConnell, seen here at the U.S. Capitol on June 11th, was hospitalized 3 days later on June 14th. A spokesperson said in a statement that the 84-year-old senator was, quote, receiving excellent care. The next day, a spokesperson said in a statement, quote, Senator McConnell is fully engaged with staff on Senate business and Kentucky matters and is very appreciative of the outstanding care he is receiving. Since then, McConnell's office has provided few details on his condition. The last update was more than a week ago in a June 22nd statement from a spokesperson which said, quote, Senator McConnell is still working closely with staff on Senate business and Kentucky matters as he continues his recovery. However, he will not be voting this week. McConnell's staff has not provided more information in response to questions about why he was admitted, where he is hospitalized, or if he remains there. McConnell announced last year that he won't seek another term and will leave office in January. An election for his seat is set for November. In 2024, after McConnell suffered a series of health scares, Kentucky's Republican-led legislature passed a law over Democratic Governor Andy Beshear's veto, stripping the governor of the ability to appoint an interim senator. Under the new law, vacancies can only be filled through a special election. Beshear argued the move was politically motivated. The bill's sponsor said the legislation had nothing to do with McConnell's health. McConnell, who survived polio as a child, fell in 2023 and took several weeks to recover, and there were concerns about his health when he appeared to freeze up in 2 public appearances. He fell again and sprained his wrist in 2024, and this past February he checked himself into a local hospital because he had flu-like symptoms. In Washington, Erin Kelly, Spectrum News.
Well, there we go. So it's not surprising, Debbie. I mean, if you watch McConnell, you can see age taking its toll. You know, and so you know,
I've been around him at several events in the past few years, and sadly have watched the decline. It's very sad.
yeah.
But you know, I'm going to give him credit for pushing through this law because it really does benefit both sides. So if you've got a Democrat holding that office, and let's say they need to resign or they die during their term, then they have to be replaced by a Democrat. And I think that's only fair, that if he is serving a term as a Republican and something happens, he has to resign, or, God forbid he passes away, a Republican gets to stay there at least until the next term. But I think what I'm hoping for now is if they can replace him, I think he needs to resign. I just think he needs to resign for the good of the country.
I think so. He probably should right now, to be honest, because people they need at least a functional person in the office, just representing the state. And so it's usually when this sort of thing happens, their staff ends up running their office, and so you basically have McConnell's staff probably running the senator's office, and so which may be fine people, but we didn't elect that staff. We elected McConnell. So, here's how this would work. And of course, this story alluded to it. The seat would become vacant. The governor does not appoint a replacement. Special election is called. But I think what happens is the General Assembly, that's right, prior to the governor had limited appointment authority and had to choose from a list provided by the departing senator's political party. However, Kentucky General Assembly had passed and overrode Governor Beshear's veto legislation limiting the appointment process. So basically,
I think the party sends up 3 names, the Kentucky Republican Party, and then the governor chooses one of those. Is that what it says? I think
so.
I
believe so. Let me read it. Okay, the governor is not appointed. Okay, prior to the 2024 law change, the governor had limited appointment authority and had to choose from a list provided by a departing senator's political party. However, now the Kentucky General Assembly passed and overrode Governor Beshear's veto of a legislation eliminating that appointment process. A special election is called. Under current Kentucky law, the governor must call a special election to fill the vacancy. The voters, not the governor, chooses the replacement. The winner receives the remainder of the. So we did basically have an election, and so just a special election. So,
but it's not to be the same party.
It's
because if we have an election, that means you have to have both sides represented.
It looks like it's just a general election. Is what I understand. So, of course,
maybe if somebody's listening out there, one of our legislators, if you know, let us correct us because we don't have it right in front of us right now.
Yeah, no, it seems to be that's the case. Now, that's according to Grok, and AI has failed us before here on the show, so I don't want to trust it fully. But anyway, so I'd love to hear your thoughts. Should he resign? Should he not?
It's really sad. It's very sad because the Save America Act is so critical, Tom.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just critical.
Yeah, there we go. that's one reason to resign right there. Let's get somebody in there that will vote for it.
I know, unless, I want to make sure we have a Republican that gets replaced, and I do believe that's what the legislature made sure of, is that the party in power is the party that gets to stay in power.
Yeah,
we just have to get the clarity, and it doesn't matter if it was the other side. We'd have to be happy with that. We have to let it be. I think that's fair. But nonetheless, that's such a critical issue for us, the Save America Act, and now this birthright citizenship, whatever comes up. There's so many issues that are just overwhelming us.
Yeah, this could be the chance that Daniel Cameron gets to become a senator.
Hey!
So I don't know. I mean,
even
maybe
if it's for a few months.
I
want him on the Supreme Court.
That's
if you're listening, Daniel, I think you'd be great be a great Supreme
Court justice. There we go. So maybe if McConnell does resign, it'd probably be something like that. Yeah. Because it looks like Barr is going to win the.
We hope.
The replacement.
Oh, I'm sure. We're not going to let a socialist in. Not in Kentucky. We're not doing that.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Anyway, okay. Well, listen, we'll be right back. We're going to talk to somebody from Turning Point USA Faith. They're going to have a big event here in Louisville in July on the 17th here at Evangel, not here, but in Louisville at Evangel World Prayer Center. And everybody's invited. It's going to be a great event. We'll see you in a minute.
back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Okay, welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. We're talking about the birthright citizenship issue, which, honestly, I kind of feel like if we don't get that resolved, what does it really mean to be an American anyway? It's like, it seems like citizenship is sort of worthless if you can just give it away to somebody that just happens to be here. And I was listening to some folks yesterday that really did a deep dive on this, Debbie. And if you listen to the words of the people that wrote that amendment, the 14th Amendment, they clarified exactly what they meant. There wasn't any ambiguity about this. They said that this does not apply to like children of ambassadors or basically of foreigners that are citizens of other countries. They basically said all this, and when they wrote
much less people coming into the country.
That's right, illegally. Exactly right. Exactly
I mean,
right.
Hello.
Yeah. So there was no ambiguity there on what the intent was with that amendment, and so why they. Other than just there's now precedent, and we've allowed it for this long, so we need it, and we got to be nice to foreigners, and that's the only reason I can think of why they did this, because legally there's nothing that justifies it. So
and if you've ever traveled out of the country, and I know you have, and I know I have, I've been so blessed to get to do that. You don't get treated like a queen or a king when you're an American.
Yeah,
those people are dead serious about their citizenship.
Absolutely. 100%.
And you want to be on the up and up when you're traveling in another country, because you just may not get home.
That's right. Yeah, exactly right.
I mean it.
Seriously, it's a risk to get out of the country. Okay, so we do have our guest with us.
Yay.
So Michael, are you with us here?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Great, sure can. I don't think. Yeah, okay. I think the video's out, but okay, Michael, you're with TPUSA Faith, and I think we're gonna get your video up here in a second. But
hey, Michael.
Hello. And so, tell us. So you have an event coming up in Evangel World Prayer Center here on the 17th, and first of all, tell us what TPUSA Faith is. And so, because
there he is.
Yeah, there he is. So we know what TPUSA is. I mean, if you've followed politics at all, Charlie Kirk and the TPUSA and all the great work they've done. What is TPUSA Faith?
Well, TPUSA Faith is it's dedicated to empowering Christians to put their faith into action by defending your God-given rights, and to articulate the connection between faith and freedom.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said. Yeah, because at the end of the day, if you don't have I think somebody said this, one of the founding fathers said this, if you don't have a religious country, you cannot have a free country, right? Because people have to self-govern. They have to be good. You have to be righteous people. You have to be moral people. And morality comes from a religious worldview, that believes that there's a right and wrong outside of our opinion. And so if you don't have a religious country that is self-governing, then you can't have freedom. And so I think Charlie was so insightful to pivot to this, and because without faith, really, we can't have America as we know it.
Well, I mean, we are one of the very few countries that has a constitution that has survived. I think the average country with a constitution, their constitution lasts on average about 13 years. But if you remember that our country was founded on religious beliefs and the ability to self-govern yourself based upon religious beliefs. Our country is the only country that their constitution has survived nearly 250 years.
Yep, exactly right.
So there's a reason for our success, and our success is 100% because of our religious freedoms and being able to self-govern.
That's right. Our religious heritage that's allowed us to pivot and renew ourselves and fix the major moral problems that we've had in this country that would typically derail another country. For example, the Civil War. The reason we sort of got rid of slavery was the abolitionist movement, which is basically a evangelical Christian movement that said this is immoral. We need to get rid of it. Now, unfortunately, it turned into a huge civil war. I guess there could have been other ways to deal with it, but still, that instinct of we need to correct this problem was a Christian instinct. Same with the civil rights movement. Same with just lots of issues that have we've corrected in our society. And so,
I'm super stoked about this event.
Yeah.
Tell me about. I want to know all about it. Tell us
what's
about
going on
this.
here? Yeah, in Louisville with TPUSA Faith.
Well, TPUSA Faith, we've got, for example, Riley Gaines is going to be one of our speakers. And
Awesome.
Riley Gaines, of course, has been she's been pivotal in lobbying for and testifying for not having biologically born men competing in women's sports. Now, she, of course, was a highly successful swimmer at the University of Kentucky. And it was her competition against the biological male at the national competition that led to a lot of the debates that have gone forward in the last several years about biological men competing in women's sports.
Well, the Supreme Court just ruled on that this week, right? So we just had a win in the Supreme Court that you cannot. What was the ruling? Basically, you can't force men in women's sports. Basically,
right? Well,
I'm not sure the exact details
states
of
have the
case.
right to stop it.
That's right. There
States
we go.
have the right. So we just hope that now those more liberal states, the people there are going to have to really fight against their legislatures there to make sure that women are protected, which is ridiculous.
That's right.
They should be able to, but at least the Supreme Court decision is on their side
That's
now.
right. So basically saying it's not a violation of civil rights to have a law that that prevents men from participating in women's sports. So that's exactly that's great.
Well, who else is coming? Who else?
Well, the basis, John Amanchukwu is a pastor who really advocates for the rights of the unborn. So it's another hot topic button in today's spiritual fight that we're in which he is a strong advocate for the unborn. TPUSA Faith, though it is a branch of TPUSA, which of course most people are aware that it has a very politically strong stance. TPUSA Faith isn't necessarily about the political hot buttons of today's society. TPUSA Faith was founded in such a way that it is for the salvation of souls. The Make Heaven Crowded tour was originally it came out of the wake or the celebration of life for Charlie Kirk, which happens shortly after his martyrdom. But it is thousands upon thousands of people coming together to hear the different speakers who come to speak of their own profession of faith. And it's not about political hot topic buttons as much as it is about bringing as many souls as possible to the kingdom of heaven. We as Christians, we have a responsibility to evangelize to those who are of lost soul, of people who, and not necessarily saying that somebody doesn't believe, they're not necessarily atheists, but people who already have a belief and a faith in God, but not necessarily living their life according to the ways of Christ. And this is what's most important to TPUSA Faith, is bringing as many souls as possible to heaven, and not necessarily touching on the political hot topic buttons of today's society.
But absolutely presenting the gospel, right? Presenting
100%.
Jesus to them, right? That's amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's
biblical
been exciting.
testimonies.
If you go to their, Miss Producer, go to the website here. This is the TPUSA Faith, and I love the way it says it here. It says, America needs a strong church. TPUSA Faith exists to unite the church around the primary doctrine, and to eliminate wokeism from the American pulpit. Because that's a problem as well, Debbie and Michael.
Totally.
Is that we've got a lot of churches that claim that they're Christian and claim that they're out there preaching the gospel, that have adopted all this woke garbage, all this left-wing Marxist stuff, and replaced the gospel with gospel of Karl Marx. So speak to that, Michael.
Well, there are a lot of hard truths about the church today, and one of the hardest truths is that a lot of your churches, I attended a conference in Dallas, and one of the pastors there talked about soft serve churches, soft serve sermons. And what he was referring to is that a lot of the churches today don't speak the truth of what the scripture states and what the scripture commands us how to live our lives. And there are a lot of churches out there today that just simply want you to be a butt in the seats, per se. Mm-hmm. They want to amplify their numbers of the people who come to their church. And they don't necessarily teach the scripture. They don't necessarily teach the hard truths about the scripture and what the scripture mm-hmm. says about how we are to live our lives. So TPUSA Faith, we're not about the soft Christianity. We're not mm-hmm. about the, let's offer concessions in your mm-hmm. belief. Let's make excuses for the way that we live our lives.
Mm-hmm. You're like the Apostle Paul and saying, preach the word. You're all saying, preach the word. Or like another evangelist I heard, Michael, he called it easy believism. We don't want any of that. I love this analogy, soft serve. That makes a lot of sense. That's what's going on. And I'm so excited that you all are doing this event on July 17th. Is it free? You said, Tom?
It is free. They do ask people to register just so they can get the head count. But Ms. Producer, if you can put this up on the screen, it's the Make Heaven Crowded Tour. And so that's 2026, and they're going all over the country. And let's see, tour stops are just literally, probably 25 different stops here. Of course, Louisville is one of those. And July 17, 2026, speakers are going to be David Engelhardt, John, I'm not going to try to pronounce it. Amanchukwu, but he's really a solid, great speaker and really, really conservative Christian, just wonderful. And of course, Riley Gaines. And we all know Riley. She's from Kentucky. She's our girl.
Yes, so we love her.
She's an amazing speaker, and you haven't seen her speak. She's really gifted, and it's going to be a great event. So come on out. It's open to anybody, and get connected with Turning Point USA, Faith, and Michael. We got 10 seconds left. What are your last thoughts?
We as Christians have a responsibility to evangelize to those who are not saved. It is not about politics. It is about doing the stewardship of what God wants us to do in our lives. And we all have a responsibility to do so.
Good stuff. Okay,
Amen.
We appreciate it. TPSA Faith Event, July 17th here in Louisville. We'll be right back. Me and Debbie, we're going to talk some more about July 4th.
back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
All right, welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. It's our last segment for today. But, Debbie, July 4th, 2 days away. And, of course, TPUSA Faith, that event's happening in July here in Louisville. That's going to be a great thing. And if you're a conservative, you generally come from a, Christian background in America. That's kind of this, and so that's, and we tend to want to conserve our heritage and our roots and our culture. And that's a Christian culture. Let's just say what it is. And a lot, and he made a point at the end of the segment there that the Christians, it's not about politics, it's about faith, and we need to get together and strengthen our faith. I agree, but there's also a political impact to that, because if you do strengthen your faith, that means your faith calls you to action and calls you to be salt and light in the world and actually stand for truth. And there's times where Christians have to get out of the pulpits and stand firm for what they believe in for themselves and their family and their communities. And because if you don't, if you may not care about politics, but politics cares about you. Right. Yep. And so, it's going to come at you. And historically, you look at Europe, the Christians in Germany in the 1930s. Oh, we're going to stay out of politics. That's whatever. And suddenly Hitler takes over, and suddenly the church is going, well, I guess we can deal with Hitler. He's anti-communist at least. Maybe he won't kill us. And so they compromised. They compromised, yeah.
And they killed themselves. And, I keep the scripture rolling around in my head right now is, thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light into my path. Yeah. So I've got to know the word of God so that I know the path to choose.
That's it.
And to be able to have deductive reasoning and make good decisions. Yep. And that's where people fail in this, and they try to separate the two. You can't do that.
You really can't.
You can't separate your character.
Because being a Christian is all-encompassing. It impacts every aspect of your life.
Right.
It impacts how you do business, and how you treat your wife, how you treat your kids, how you treat your neighbors, how you treat your community and your country. All that's impacted if you are truly a believer, a Christian. And if you're not a Christian, if you're somebody that just has a nominal faith and you just believe in God or whatever, you still have a worldview that's informed by that. If you're an American, because America is, we're basically built on a Christian assumption about everything.
Right.
Every assumption we make about freedom, it comes from a biblical
freedom in
perspective.
Christ.
It's right. Yeah, you wouldn't have
freedom.
You wouldn't have America if we were Muslims, right? If we came from a Muslim culture, you would not have America.
We would not.
Proof of that, Islam's been around in the Middle East for 1,500 years. None of them are democratic unless they've been conquered Turkey's somewhat democratic, but that took Ataturk to come in and say, we're not Muslim anymore. We're just going to be secular Europeans. And so it's just anyway. So
it's very crazy, but I just want to say that one of my favorite little things, I meant to bring it today, when a little statue I have in my home, Tom, it's of Mount Vernon.
Mary,
it's a little
statue.
house. What?
Not a Mary statue?
I'll pretend. Yeah. I have like this little house that is a replica of Mount Vernon.
Oh, yeah.
Which is George Washington's home.
Yeah.
And I remember taking it to a marriage retreat many years ago because they said to bring something to the retreat that represents your marriage.
Okay.
But I want to say, too, it represents my faith, because that little replica is foundation. It represents the foundation of America because of George Washington and him being willing to give up being a king when they wanted him to be a king. And he said, nope, I'm not going to be a king. This is going to be we the people, by the people, for the people. So that little house that I have, it sits in my music room, reminds me of the foundation of this nation and how amazing it is and how we've got to preserve it at all cost. And more so, my faith in God, it's foundational. It's worth fighting for. It's worth not, getting older as I am and sitting on my tail because, I've worked hard all my life and now I don't need to worry about this. Oh, yes, I do.
Yes, you do.
I'm a mom and I hope to be a grandmother. And I know you're an uncle and you have, we have people that we love. We got
to pass this
nation.
country down to somebody.
Yes.
And it's, I don't want to be ashamed of what I've passed down to them.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? I want to be able to say, I have what you now have what I've been given. I've been given this great country. I've been able to I want you to have that same same privilege. So glad you brought up Washington and Mount Vernon and all that. You know, there's a first of all, he's the indispensable man. He really is a founding father. I mean, he's
and he was
that,
protected by God. Even
absolutely.
the Indians that wrote the stories about how they tried to kill him, and they said angels had to have saved you.
They stopped shooting at him.
We shot you many times.
That's
they
right.
said.
That's right. So we tried to kill you. Bullets kept missing you. So there's a movie coming out, Young Washington.
I'm going.
Are you going? Yeah, it's
Yay.
actually tomorrow. I'm actually I'm gonna try to go see it tomorrow myself. But if you haven't heard about it, it's a movie about Washington and his early life and
Angel Studios.
Angel Studios made it, and I'm really excited. It's a really great concept and so cool that it's coming out on the 250th anniversary of the country because you know he really is our most important founding father and you know gosh, I can so much to say about Washington, but anyway, but like you said, this is you have to have a strong culture of religious faith in this country in order for the country to continue. You know, you need that in order to maintain freedom, and with that, and Washington understood that. You know, one of the first things he did when he got his army together, we're just going to stop and we're going to pray. We're going to pray, and the reason why that was so important to that generation is they just went through a huge religious revival. Called the First Great Awakening.
Right.
And, America was founded.
And that's a great movie too that just came out. Did you see that one?
I did. Yeah.
Yes, with what was his name?
Wait,
what was his name? Oh goodness, we can't remember.
Whitworth.
Whitworth. Yes.
Yeah.
No, Whitfield. Whitfield, because Whitfield Academy. Right.
Jonathan Whitfield, who was the evangelist and basically was the founding father. If you want to really get back to why America is what it is.
And he impacted Benjamin Franklin. The movie is about his relationship with Benjamin Franklin and that great revival here in America. You're right. Two great movies, people. You got to watch them.
You got to see it. Yeah, both those came out this year, and they're amazing. Yeah, Whitfield. Yeah, the relationship between him and Franklin is so cool.
Yeah.
I didn't realize a lot of the history. Whitfield was an English Methodist preacher and evangelist, and he came over to America and basically just preached nonstop all up and down the colonies. All the colonies got real spiritually awakened. There's an awakening that occurred. They all felt like they were connected for the first time because usually the 13 colonies up to that point really had a sense that they were like 13 different nations and 13 different. But Whitfield, in the way he traveled and preached, and also Benjamin Franklin printing his sermons and popularizing him through his newspaper is what kind of brought the whole country together culturally and spiritually. And so when they so by the time they had the revolution came around, the country already saw itself as a distinct moral people that were actually the British were much like the woke elite of this of the West, you know, because they were very decadent. They saw Americans as a bunch of backwoods hicks, Bible thumpers, and they didn't relate to us at all. And they were just like, you all just need to get in line because we're in charge and we got the money, we got the guns. And we just said, no, we're kind of don't appreciate you the way you treat us, and we're different people and we're moving on. And so it was just. And
I love too the Black Robe Regiment.
Oh yeah,
remember that?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Those are the preachers in the colonies that.
That's right.
Would if you've seen the movie, the Mel Gibson movie, what was that one? That's another one to go back and watch again.
The Patriot. Yeah, right.
Watch it again. It's so amazing. But you had a Black Robe Regiment guy in there who took his coat off and he had
took his musket.
Yeah,
he said, "Well, let's go, boys.
We're going.
Let's get it on."
He's a man of God.
That's
right.
So
we are so blessed to live in this nation.
Yeah,
we are so blessed.
Also, so blessed to live in the state. Now, tomorrow, I'm going to have a special program. I'm going to interview a gentleman from the Filson Society. We're going to talk about the history of Kentucky.
Oh, wow.
During the Revolution. Yeah. And we're going to discuss, of course, Daniel Boone, maybe James Herod.
Of course, Abraham Lincoln, I hope.
Well, that wasn't the founding. Well, of course, that was a few years later.
He was born here.
He was born here, exactly right. Yeah, it's an important figure. But when it comes to the Revolution, Kentucky had a huge role to play. George Rogers Clark.
Yes.
Canada would be in Indiana right now if it wasn't for George Rogers Clark. He basically conquered the whole Midwest, and he did it from a base here in Louisville. And he's basically lived and died here in Louisville. And so, great figure. We need to learn more about him. But we're going to do that tomorrow. So, and just the story of the Kentucky settling, and just the Boone and Herod and all these pioneers came in and basically came into. Let me just say it. It was basically an open, empty territory. Kentucky was mostly empty. and there hardly any Indians living here. Most of the Indians that would abide here came either from the south, like from the Cherokees that would come in and hunt, or the Shawnee that would come in and hunt. But even those tribes are very, very small tribes,
Right.
And so America in its founding was basically settlers that came in and started settling a mostly empty continent. And if people always miss that dynamic when they talk about the Native Americans and the settling and the conflicts between, there were so very few of them. I mean, like the number of Shawnee that actually lived in Ohio and Indiana were maybe 2,000 or 3,000 at the most. The biggest army they could muster was maybe a couple hundred warriors, and so they just you could literally build a whole town and not see an Indian for a year or two. And then one would come along and say, hey, this is our land. We hunt here. It's like, where you been? I built the place. So that's a whole dynamic that people miss in that whole story. And so now it doesn't mean you treat the Indians badly, and we tried not to, but there was definitely a cultural difference. They looked at sort of warfare and tribal warfare is it's a very brutal way of coming after enemies. It was just I could read stories on the air that would really make you mad.
I do hope too that he will touch on the Speed family, of course, who John Speed was in President Lincoln's cabinet.
That's
and
right.
a lot of people don't know the story that Abraham Lincoln, he broke his engagement off with Mary Todd. Did you know that?
He did it over here on Barstow Road, right?
Well, no, he broke it off with her in Missouri, but he came here to soothe his heart.
Oh.
And Mrs. Speed gave him a Bible, and that Bible is now in the Smithsonian Institute.
Really?
Yeah. And the only reason I know that is because I took the Dale Carnegie course a million years ago. Okay. And Dale Carnegie wrote this book, Tom, called Lincoln the Unknown. And Carnegie was big in the 20s.
Right. Yeah.
So he actually interviewed people that still knew Lincoln because they were still around. And they learned about the engagement, the broken engagement.
Really?
And Lincoln came here for several weeks and stayed at Farmington.
Farmington? Yeah, Farmington.
Yeah, Farmington.
You got to go visit Farmington,
so
right there in the
Farmington
Highlands.
is all Lincoln. He stayed there for 3 weeks.
That's right. That was his best friend.
Right. And he was in the
Jonathan
cabinet.
Speed. That's right. Yeah, exactly right. He lived there, and so that's a fascinating place to see. It's right there in the Highlands, right there near the Watersett Expressway.
Right behind Sullivan College. Actually, Sullivan bought some of their property way back when because it was a big plantation, a big hemp plantation. Yeah. But the Speed family, you've got Speed Museum, the Speed School at U of L. You've got so much, and but I'm so excited about the Filson Club guy.
Yeah, exactly right.
Cool.
So we're to see that. Okay. Listen, we appreciate you all watching. Listen, have a great July 4th. Enjoy some fireworks and some hot dogs and burgers. And we appreciate you all watching. Appreciate you supporting Kentucky's Voice. And Debbie, appreciate you. And we'll see you tomorrow here on Kentucky's Voice.